Deborah Kerr finally tells the truth about Burt Lancaster. Deborah Kerr was born Deborah Jane Trimmer on September 30th, 1921 in Helensburgh, Scotland. From when she was very young, Kerr acted with a quiet grace that made her special. She grew up in a loving family and even as a kid showed she loved to perform and act for people. At first she learned to be a ballet dancer. She went to school at Hicks Male Drama School in Bristol, England, before making the big choice to become an actress, a decision that would later make her a star around the world. Kerr started working in movies during the 1940 seconds, at a time when Britain was fighting in World War II. She quickly got the attention of movie makers and directors who saw in her a special mix of beauty, grace, and smarts. Her big break came with Major Barbara, 1941, and Colonel Blimp, 1943, movies that let her show she could play many different kinds of characters. Unlike many actresses back then who were often made to play the same type of role, Kerr proved she could play gentle heroines, strong tough women, and complicated people, always with a deep feeling that made characters come alive on screen. Hollywood soon noticed how talented she was. By the late 1940s, Kerr had started making American movies where she would play her most famous roles. She became a regular in MGM movies, often playing the perfect example of class, style, and quiet inner strength. In Black Narcissus, 1947, she gave an amazing performance as a nun dealing with faith and wanting things, a role that is still one of the most famous in British movies. But her career wasn't just limited to serious or quiet roles. One of the most famous moments in movie history came in From Here to Eternity, 1953, where Kerr surprised audiences by stepping outside her ladylike image to play the passionate and cheating Karen Holmes. The beach kissing scene with Burt Lancaster, waves crashing around them, is still one of cinema's most unforgettable and bold moments, making Kerr's reputation as an actress who wasn't afraid to take chances throughout the 1950s and 1960 seconds. Kerr kept giving performances that showed her amazing range. She became loved around the world for her role as an Leon Owens opposite Yelbrunner in The King and I-1956, with her royal way of acting, warmth, and cuidamore. Kerr played the role of the English school teacher in Siam with such perfection that the film is still Adamless classic loved by many generations. Her other praised performance encircled Tea and Sympathy 1956, where she carefully handled issues of social prejudice. Heaven Knows Mr. Allison 1957, a sweet and touching war movie opposite Robert Mitchum and The Innocents 1961. A scary gothic story that showed her ability to show psychological intensity over the course of her career. Deborah Kerr was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress 6 times, but never won in competition, a fact that many movie lovers thought was one of the big mistakes in Oscar history. But in 1994, the Academy gave her an honorary Oscar for her body of work, and for an artist of perfect grace and beauty. A dedicated actress whose movie career has always stood for perfection, discipline, and elegance. This recognition was a perfect tribute to a career that had made movies better for decades. Deborah Kerr's first marriage was to squadron leader Anthony Bartley of the Royal Air Force, a decorate World War II fighter pilot whose bravery in combat had made him something of a hero in his own right. The two married on November 29, 1945, only months after the end of the war, in a ceremony that showed both the happy and happiness of a world just beginning to heal from years of fighting. Their marriage brought together the glamour of a rising Hollywood star and their respect of a man who had served his country with honor. During their years together, they had 2 daughters who would each go on to live successful and happy lives. Their first child, Melanie Jane Bartley, was born on the 27th of December, 1947, and their second, Francesca Anna Bartley, arrived 4 years later on the 18th of December, 1951. Francesca would later marry actor John Shrapnel, connecting Deborah Kerr's legacy with another respected family in the British acting world. Through Francesca's marriage, Deborah became a grandmother to 3 talented grandsons, Lex Shrapnel, who followed in his family's footsteps as a talented actor known for both stage and screen work, Tom Shrapnel, who also made his own career as an actor, and Joe Shrapnel, who found his creative calling as a screenwriter, adding an authoristic side to the family's heritage. Even though her marriage to Bartley started well, problems began to show up over time. The marriage was hurt by the very things that had made Deborah a global star. Her fame, her professional success, and the financial independence she had worked so hard to get. Bartley, the complicit himself, struggled with feelings of jealousy toward her achievements, and the attention she got on an international scale. Making these tensions worse was the nature of her career, which often required her to travel long distances and spend long periods away from home, often on demanding movie sets far moved from family life. These separations put a heavy burden on their relationship, and despite their shared love for their children, the differences between them proved impossible to fix. After nearly 14 years of marriage, Deborah and Bartley divorced in 1959, bringing to an end a chapter of her personal life that had been marked by both moments of joy and deep challenges. A year later, Deborah Kerr started a new journey when she married the American-born writer and screenwriter Peter Viertel on the 23rd of July 1960. Viertel was a man of books, celebrated not only for his novels but also for his work in Hollywood, where he helped write screenplays and was connected with literary and artistic circles of the mid-20th century. Through this marriage, Deborah also became a stepmother to Viertel's daughter Christine Viertel, with whom she shared a bond that further expanded her families. Unlike her first marriage, which had been shadowed by professional rivalry and conflict, her relationship with Viertel was often described as one of friendship and mutual respect. Even though it too had its complications, for much of her later life, Kerr split her time between two of Europe's most beautiful locations. She and Viertel lived in Klosters, Switzerland, a peaceful alpine village loved by artists, intellectuals, and even members of European royalty, and in Marbella, Spain, a glamorous resort town along the Costa del Sol. These homes showed the worldly lifestyle that Deborah enjoyed after retiring from demands of Hollywood stardom. However, as she grew older and her health began to decline, Kerr made the decision to return to Britain so she could be closer to her daughters and grandchildren, who remained at the center of her affections. Though her husband continued to live in Marbella, the couple's bond endured, with Peter Viertel remaining her faithful companion until her final years, their marriage lasting nearly 5 decades. Until Kerr's passing in 2007 gave her stability and companionship that was different from the trouble of her earlier years, showing her ongoing search for balance between her private life and the legacy of her remarkable career. For decades, Deborah Kerr had a reputation as one of Hollywood's most refined and quiet leading ladies, a performer whose elegance, intelligence, and sense of privacy set her apart from many of her peers. But behind the polished-headed side, she carried vivid memories of working with some of the biggest names of her era, including the powerful and sometimes unpredictable Burt Lancaster. Their most famous collaboration came in From Here to Eternity, 1953, a film that not only changed the direction of both of their careers, but also became one of the most famous productions of the 20th century. It was in discussing her work on that movie and her interactions with Lancaster that Kerr finally revealed her true thoughts about him, offering remarks that shocked some fans while confirming what others had long suspected. Deborah Kerr's comments were honest and filled with a frankness rarely heard from her. Burt was unlike anyone else I had ever worked with. He was loud, forceful, and had this enormous presence that filled the entire room. But that same energy that made him magnetic could also be overwhelming and at times very difficult to manage for Kerr, who had built her career on grace and discipline. The raw intensity of Lancaster could be both exciting and exhausting. She admitted that their dynamic on set mirrored the fiery, complicated passion of the characters they portrayed. She explained more about Lancaster's dual nature. People thought Burt was just a tough guy, this rugged American male, but he was also incredibly intelligent and deeply thoughtful about his work. At the same time, he didn't always know how to control himself. He could be very demanding, and there were moments where I felt he pushed not only me, but everyone else far beyond what was comfortable. This revelation exposed a side of Lancaster that Hollywood gossip writers had only hinted at. His never-ending drive and sometimes busy presence could clash with his co-stars, even those as experienced and professional as Kerr. The famous beach scene in From Here to Eternity, which became one of the most romantic and endearing moments in film history at the time, was not as easy as it appeared on screen. Kerr confessed that scene was not easy to film. The waves were stronger than expected. The sand was everywhere, and Burt, being Burt, insisted we go through it again and again until he was satisfied. I wayshoxed it, and at times I felt like I couldn't breathe. But the result, a Severio knows, was unforgettable. Here, Kerr pulled back the curtain on the price of movie perfection. The physical discomfort and emotional strain hidden beneath the glamour of an iconic moment. Yet, her words were not purely critical. Kerr also acknowledged the undeniable chemistry between herself and Lancaster, despite the challenges. There was a spark between us that you can't fake. Burt brought out a side of me on screen that audiences had never seen before. Until then, I had been typecast as the proper English lady. But with Burt, I was allowed to break free of that image. He was daring. And he made me daring too, in exposing Lancaster's influence. She admitted that his forceful personality helped her break their restrictive image that had limited her career in earlier years. Still, Kerr did not shy away from exposing the darker side of her co-star. He was not the easiest man to trust. Burt had a temper, and he wanted to control everything. You always had to be on your guard with him because he could turn on you in an instant. There were times when I felt more like I was in a battle with him than a partnership. Such honesty painted a more complicated picture of Lancaster than the charming, heroic figures he often played on screen. Perhaps the most startling of Kerr's comments was her reflection on Lancaster's reputation off-screen. P.O. pleaded him, and yes, he could be incredibly charming when he wanted to. But there was another side that the public never saw, one that could be ruthless. I don't think Burt ever fulfilled anyone in. He liked to be in control, and that included relationship. You always had to be careful around him by speaking supinely. Deborah Kerr not only exposed the personal challenges of working with Burt Lancaster, but also showed the truth about Hollywood's golden age. Beneath the surface glamour were human beings, deeply flawed, ambitious, and sometimes difficult to deal with. Her words carried the weight of decades of silence. A release of honesty from a woman who had built her life on grace and restraint. And yet, even in exposing him, she acknowledged the undeniable impact he had on her career and legacy. I don't regret working with Burt, Kerr concluded. He was unforgettable, and together we created something that will last far longer than either of us. Buve was also a man I could never fully trust, and that is the truth, with those remarks. Deborah Kerr finally revealed the complexity of Burt Lancaster, exposing not just the actor, but the man behind the legend. A figure as captivating as he was conflicted, and a presence that continued to shape her story long after the cameras stopped rolling. Deborah Kerr passed away on the 16th of October 2007 at the age of 86 in Botesdale, a quiet and picturesque village in the county of Suffolk, England. This small rural community, known for its historic charm and peacefulness, became the final resting place of one of cinema's most famous actresses. Kerr had lived a long and remarkable life, one defined by grace, discipline, and an extraordinary dedication to her craft. But in her final years, she struggled with the devastating effects of Parkinson's disease, the illness which slowly takes away its sufferer's motor control and independence. Gradually weakened her, though those who knew her often said that she faced her condition with the same courage and dignity that had characterized her entire life. Her death marked the end of an era for audiences who had admired her since the golden age of Hollywood, when she starred in unforgettable classics such as The King and I, From Here to Eternity, and An Affair to Remember. News of her passing spread through both the film community and among her devoted admirers and the world, who mourned not only the loss of a great actress, but also of a woman who had embodied refinement, intelligence, and subtle emotional depth on screen. Tragically, within just 3 weeks of Kerr's death, her husband, the writer and screenwriter Peter Viertel, also passed away. Viertel, who had been her partner for decades, died of cancer on the 4th of November, 2007. The closeness of their death struck me as both touching and heartbreaking. For those who knew them as a couple, it seemed almost fitting that they would not be long separated in death after so many years of companionship in life. Viertel had been a remarkable figure in his own right. An accomplished novelist and screenwriter, he had worked with some of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century and carved out a distinctive career that often intersected with Hollywood history. His works reflected his deep intelligence and worldly experiences, and together he and Kerr had formed a partnership grounded in mutual respect and shared artistic sensibilities. His passing so soon after hers gave their story a sense of tragic symmetry, as though one could not go on without the other.